Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Pivoting During the Pandemic webinar. My name is Joanne Murphy, and I'm delighted to host this session on behalf of NUI Galway. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Galway on the west of Ireland. We're delighted to see so many people joining us here today for the webinar. This webinar is part of a series hosted by the European funded project AFES, otherwise known as a quadruple helix Atlantic area healthy food ecosystem for growth of SMEs. This project is run by an international consortium with Atlantic area partners from Ireland, Spain, Wales, France and Portugal, seeking to improve the competitiveness and growth of SMEs in the value chain of healthy eating and daily life. Specifically, the mission is to achieve an ecosystem of healthy food in the Atlantic area of 4 propellers: public authorities, industry, research and citizens, for the growth of SMEs in the food industry. Training and supports are designed to promote the competitiveness and growth of the organizations, providing them with advanced and personalized support services that allow them to innovate in healthy foods and lifestyles. Today's webinar promises to be insightful, informative and in many ways inspirational, highlighting successful innovation and creativity during the pandemic. So to get us started, Dr. Jane Walsh will open our session. Dr. Walsh is Director of the mHealth Research Group in NUI Galway and Leader of Health and Wellbeing Cluster in the Whitaker Institute. She is a work package leader on the AFES project and together with her team led the work on market and consumer analysis for innovations in the food industry, and will be running a series of webinars on innovation and the psychology of consumer behaviour over the coming months. So Jane, you are very welcome to our webinar today.
Thanks very much, Joanne, and thank you very much for the introduction. And a huge welcome to everyone who's joined us here today. There's a huge turnout. We're absolutely thrilled, and an international group of people attending today. So as Joanne described, this is a European initiative, and the main function is to look at developing a healthy food ecosystem throughout Europe, and this in particular focused on the Atlantic seaboard area. So we're thrilled to have international speakers with us today from a variety of different backgrounds who are going to talk about how they have pivoted during what's been an extremely challenging time for the food industry. And so this webinar, we hope, will inspire you when you hear about the creativity and innovation that our speakers are going to bring. We have a mix of description of supports to SMEs, and we have descriptions from real live industries who've worked to try to adapt to their circumstances. So huge welcome and thank you very much, Joanne, for hosting. And I'm really excited to hear our speakers today.
Thank you, Jane. And of course, we'll hear from Jane at the very end again. Now, before we welcome our guest speakers, some housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, as you'll notice. We will be holding a question and answer session after our panelists have spoken. So please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask questions, and we will do our utmost best to facilitate all those that come in. And as we introduce our first speaker, please do tell us in the chat button, where are you tuning in from and what is your role in the food industry? Now to our first speaker, we are delighted to welcome Elaine Donoghue, General Manager of the BIA Innovator Campus in Galway. Elaine oversees and manages the initial development of the not-for-profit company, delivery of its capital project, and the company's operation once opened in 2022. Elaine has extensive knowledge and experience from her academic success at Smurfit Business School in Dublin to her hands-on experience working in the food sector. She gained robust knowledge of the retail industry and its workings following her years with Lidl. She then gained an extensive international perspective from working for Board BIA in their London office. Elaine has worked commercially as a national account manager for Green Farm Foods and Brady Family Ham, managing both domestic and export channels of the business. Prior to her appointment at the BIA Innovator Campus, Elaine proudly led the Galway West of Ireland European Region of Gastronomy designation. It was awarded Best Economic Development Project in Ireland at the Chambers Ireland Excellence in Local Government Awards 2018 and nominated as one of the top 5 large projects along the Wild Atlantic Way at the Irish Tourism Industry Awards in 2019. Elaine, you are very welcome to our webinar today. We're delighted to have you join us from the BIA Innovator Campus.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you for having me, and delighted to be able to speak to you all today. I'm just going to share my screen now, and I'm going to go through a presentation just to talk to you a bit about Be Innovator Campus, which is an evolving project in the west coast of Ireland. Just 1 second, if we can all see my screen okay. So look, this is just a picture. I'm going to take a few minutes today to just talk to you about this project and what we aspire to achieve through its delivery. This is a project came about Galway and the west of Ireland was designated a European Region of Gastronomy in 2018. And from 2017 onwards, a huge number of gaps within the industry in the west of Ireland hindering its development were identified. And this campus has been set about to try and, I suppose, fill those gaps and also provide connectivity from farm the whole way through to fork. So often you'll find within the industry, they're very strong sectors and along the supply chain, but the connectivity can often be missing. And there's a huge amount of innovation that can take place when we're collaborating right from farm to fork. So just a quick intro to the Be Innovator Campus. So this is set up as a not-for-profit company, and I suppose it has a 10 voluntary directors, board of directors that are working alongside myself to deliver a €7 million infrastructural development based in Athenry, which is in the west of Ireland. I'll show you on a map now in a second. And I suppose the founding partners through this are Galway County Council and Teagasc. So Galway County Council as the public authority through their economic development side of things, they want to create jobs and sustain the food industry. The region we're in has a huge agricultural background. The county itself, not to mind the region, has about 12,000 farms, and our Indigenous industry is so important, and it's so important for our culture, from where we've come from in the past to where we are today as regards a modern food community. So I suppose the investment in that for the future and in trying to plug in the supports required is of critical importance. And these two initiators had been joined by an education and training board from Galway Roscommon, the local enterprise office, another really important local social enterprise, Skull, the Western Development Commission, and obviously the local community council. So I suppose the main point of what was lacking, I suppose, the whole way along the chain, whether you be a farmer, a food producer, the culinary and hospitality sector, there are gaps in all those sectors, whether that be talent and trying to attract talent into the industry and retain them, or whether that be trying to innovate, trying to create value, trying to get respect for the beautiful product that you produce, and trying to tell its story and support it through that journey. And I'll take you through just the facilities and how we offer all that. So just across the board, while we definitely in the west of Ireland have a very strong food industry, a very authentic offering, very strong connection with our roots and where our food comes from. There still are challenges for growth and progress. And again, we've had a year and a half of COVID, and all our food businesses have been challenged to the nth degree, and they've gone through a huge amount of struggle. So no matter what challenge comes, we need to be able to, I suppose, adjust and move on and be innovative and have the supports required to in that scenario. So we're looking forward to this facility opening towards the tail end of the year, and really then it will kick off and develop as required. So just to give you an idea of where we're at, this is the map of Ireland, and this shows kind of all types of facilities for food innovation, whether it be a small little kitchen, whether it is a university support facility, whatever it might be. And you will notice that within Ireland, like, you know, on the southern half of the country, there's a huge amount more facilities than there are in the west and northwest. So there's a huge void there of support for the food community at any stage. And obviously one of our partners, Teagasc, they have the food industry development team are in Dublin in Ashtown, and they have Moore Park in Cork then, which would lead out on a lot of the dairy expertise. And then we're co-located on the site in Athenry. So again, all these different hubs and facilities are our neighbours, and we work with them, but we want to provide all the types of services, not just food production on our site. So what will be different at Be Innovator versus any of the rest that's out there at the minute? So you'll be able to come to Be Innovator whether you know anything or a huge amount about food, and you'll be able to get help on your journey that's specific to you. So you can't, I suppose, paint all areas of the food industry with the same brush. Every business, every individual has their own plans and their own path. It might be a local path to grow locally. It might be ambitions to export, but we support the food community wherever we can on that path and appropriate to them. So if they're an artisan producer that want to focus locally and maybe get into food tourism, we'll support them. If you are a chef that wants to, I suppose, change direction and, maybe open up your own restaurant or whatever it might be, that we'll do our best to help support you in your journey and whatever you need to learn. And I suppose make sure that we value our talent and that we are giving them opportunity to connect and network. So on site we have dedicated production facilities. So for anyone interested in catering or food production of any sort, we take out the initial cost. So you can come and use our facilities instead of investing or on your own, So if you want to rent a day a week, you can. If you want to have a 4-year contract, you can for your own facility. And it takes out a lot of the setup cost and the barriers to entry into the food industry and to add value. So we also then on site have a full food technology team. So at the minute we have 1 food technologist, but by the time we open, we'll have 3 specialists in that area, supported by a team of operatives. So again, if you're stuck, it's not a nice place to be on your own and to be stuck, but you'll have that support to get you move you along. And then outside of that, we do have the plug-in then to all the different Teagasc centres. So if there is a query or if there is something you want to know about and we don't have the answer, we can find the answer. So whether that's a packaging query or a query on horticulture, about growing, we have different specialists that we can tap into within the wider Teagasc community that we work with regularly. So, gluten-free, there's so many different areas of the food industry that are of interest. And if you need some specialist expertise, we can access that. This is just an overview of the campus of what's on offer, the different buildings. So Building 1 is the heart of the campus. It's our Bia Olus. It's where you come to learn, to develop, to network, meet your peers. And in this area as well, we will be running Bia Blas, which is kind of a food tourism element. So we will be able to bring groups in and to the facility and give them an experience of Irish food, of Galway food, seafood, meat, dairy, get an appreciation for seaweed, whatever it might be. We have opportunities to train the community in this area, but also to offer experiences ourselves and have people learn. So if they want to do maybe tour guiding or get the right skills to learn in certain areas, we can provide that. We also have our acceleration piece here as well. So whatever direction you want to grow in and whatever supports you need, we can offer that. So if you come to us and you don't know anything about food, but you have an interest in, I don't know, ice cream, we can get you out and about to spend a day with a food producer and understand what life is like in that scenario. Same also with if you have an interest in becoming a chef or bakery, pastry, whatever it might be. I mean, our aim is to connect. So we will try arrange that you spend some time with someone in that area and build that excitement and that interest and ask questions and feel free to join a community that'll help you on your journey wherever you're at. Same if you're a business, whether it's established or new, whatever stage you're at in your journey or wherever you're stuck, we will help unstick you and help bring some, I suppose, direction to where you're going and support any gaps that you may have in your business. Behind Building 1, that taller piece, is our co-working space, and this we see with huge interest in this area. So we have 4 different shared production facilities for different specialties. I'll go through in a minute, and you can rent these spaces by a half day, a full day, and you will have all the correct equipment to help you, I suppose, produce in less time and to be in a professional facility to the right standards. So that, it takes a lot of the stress and the cost out for you because investment at early stage, it's very hard to invest when you're only starting off, and it might be just an idea and you want to pilot it or whatever it might be, and it's very hard to justify the cost. And at the back of the side there, you'll see two smaller buildings, low-lying ones, and on the left are starter units. So anyone who has been, I suppose, producing and supplying, whether it be markets, festivals, the local shop, or on a wider scale, they can get their own starter unit. So it's a small kitchen unit, about 60 square meters. It's fully fitted out with food grade paneling and floors. And you get your own door, your own key and your own contract, and you can produce there to a very high standard. The cost to a producer, if they were to invest in something like this themselves, would be about €100,000. So not to mind how difficult it can be, even in rural Ireland, to get things like three-phase power. We don't think about these things sometimes, but it's just to try and help people at the very start of their journey to get off the ground. We also look after things, simple things like discharge licenses, Irish water, your gas connection. So they all come to the door, and the producer can finish the fit out internally to whatever layout they want themselves. And again, you know, you have to admire producers who operate on their own in a very lone environment and don't have perhaps a big team. At least when they come here, they'll have neighbours to share challenges with and to discuss, you know, what's happened for them this week, and you know, to grow together. At the back then you'll see the growth units. So there's 3 larger units, so you could probably run a business here with about 20 to 25 staff, with the mezzanine. And again, it's just helping people to grow, so you can get to that business size without having to actually invest in facilities yourself, and not mind I suppose planning requirements and just fire regulations and all the different things that can be quite difficult at early stage. So you can focus on you, your business, your product, and not worry about the whole big investment and the barriers that go with that. So look, this is the initial team at the minute. We're still growing. I mean, our focus at the minute has been delivering on the capital project. We'll be adjusting that as we go now. So I'm steering overall as the general manager. I have a team of 2 at the minute. Sarah, who's our project coordinator, so that's who you'd speak to day to day, and Colin Foley, who's our food technologist. And that team is going to expand now. So we're next week commencing the hiring of 4 new staff, someone to head up our innovation and technology team. We'll also have a head of community and facilities on site who will kick off more wider community engagement. And then we'll also have some project managers. So we'll be involved in a number of EU projects. That'll be one of the project managers, because we want to transfer best in class learning at a European level. And then a second community manager there as well. The food technology team, as I mentioned before, there will be the head of food technology and innovation, 2 technologists and 3, I suppose, production operatives to support with how to work machinery, how to do your practice flow properly, how to operate and, you know, to assist and get people unstuck. So look, as I mentioned before, who will benefit? Food entrepreneurs, any food business established at the kitchen table that need production facilities, whether that be a cafe that is getting into their own product production, or someone who wants to operate as, in essence, a ghost kitchen. They don't want to have a bricks and mortar premises. I mean, things have definitely through COVID changed. You know, this delivery systems in Ireland have transformed over the space of the last year and a half. So we're there for anyone, even a farmer who at the minute, you know, has a great product, an organic lamb, and they just haven't ever looked at adding the value and actually selling direct to consumer themselves. They can use our meat unit. So, and we'll help with the training, you know, to plug that gap. You can't be expected to be an expert in everything, but we'll help you on your journey and whatever you need. And we will be linking in with an awful lot of the training agencies locally. So, you know, with NUIG, GMIT, and the Galway Roscommon Education and Training Board, to help get the upskilling right and to help people pivot within the sector. So if a farmer wants to be a food producer, that's no problem. They just need the right skills and support to get there. And same with anyone else across the supply chain. So look, we'll have that mix of technical innovation, commercial support, mentoring, training, peer support, helping to link you up with whoever you need to get access to. So whether it's the advice, the upskilling, or just being part of the community, it can really help you if you're sharing your challenges with others. This is just the concept around the co-working kitchen. So we have a meat unit for raw meat production, and we're hoping that this will help an awful lot of the farming community, or anyone who wants to have their own product and to actually sell it direct to consumer. The general purpose unit, in essence, is like a large catering kitchen, can be used by all. The dairy unit will have all the equipment for producing yogurt, pasteurizing, tilting kettles, ice cream, cheese, for all that type of production. And then the seafood unit as well will have, you can be able to smoke and process raw seafood. Now that unit can also be used as a general purpose unit as well. So in the co-working, what we're providing there is, you pay as you go. You get the premium appliances that are a step up from your domestic use, and then you can work across whatever specialism that you want. And then when you are ready, without investing a huge amount of money, you can have a rental contract on a starter unit and then grow into your own large unit. So food grade space, which is very expensive, your own contract and door, and you fit out your own unit the way you want. In building one, where I spoke about our Biolis, our learning and showcasing, this is just one of the showcase rooms. So it's for showcasing to buyers. So whether you're trying to sell a food experience or a food tour of your farm to international buyers in food tourism, you can bring them in here and showcase to them your product, your offering, your facility. Whether it's a food product, a new cheese that you've making, you can take them through your farm, but you don't have to hold your meetings as such on site. You could have somewhere like this. We also see the space as flexible, so we'd like to see it as a pop-up shop seasonally to support local food producers in that area. So it's flexible, it's multi-use, however people see it will help their business. The auditorium as well, it's a 60-seater capacity, so we want to be able to host seminars, events, learning, trainings, sharing. So at the front of there, you'll see this cooking demonstration for 2 chefs to cook at the same time. We also have a podium for presentations to run alongside that. We have cameras that can broadcast live. So if for example, if you have a meal kit, or you'll be able to record or stream live how to use that kit, and how to make up your product, and I suppose sell your business. So whether that's how to use a food product or the benefits of local lamb, you'll be able to use all these facilities as you see fit, or whether you want to create an event, that's all there as well. Very flexible space. Next door to that then is an audiovisual room with a 9-screen wall. So again, flexible for meetings, networking, groups, lunches, whatever it might be. But again, we're trying to create as much flexible space to provide education and training or showcasing or whatever that might be. And that's most of the space downstairs, those 3 rooms. Upstairs then we have a dedicated culinary training room with 16 stations. So this can be used from everything from industry training, if there's recipe development for restaurants or hotels, if it's upskilling a team of chefs on whatever it might be, a certain area. It's all available there, and very flexible. It could also be used for food production. It'll be certified by the HSE. So I suppose we're trying to get the most use out of every space that we can and have it relate across the industry. Surrounded there you'll see our business centre, so hot desking if you want to book a hot desk to work for a day, and a coffee bar just for people to meet, connect. We'd like to be able to run lunchtime talks on different areas of the industry, or if there's anything topical that's popping up weekly. These are just some images of our business centre, obviously all in 3D format at the moment. We can't wait to be able to get the real versions when we're complete, but different booths for people to meet and chat and or plan, and meeting rooms off that as well, phone, private phone booths as well for calls and that, whatever is required. This is just a quick layout of one of our co-working spaces, just to give you an idea. It's a proper production space. So on the bottom right, we've changing lobbies, and on that's the bottom right, and the bottom or the left hand side, you'll see our intake for goods and chilled areas for intake and dispatch. And then we've set up our process flow in a U shape and all the different machinery that's there. And in the center, you have different workstations. So in this shared space, there's 4 to 5 different desks, and people will share that space as much as they go along. again, as I mentioned, temperature controlled, proper facilities for goods in and out and deliveries. We'll provide the proper training. So if someone is coming into the space and they don't, they're producing at the minute with domestic appliances, we can show them how to use the machinery, how to use the different cleaning processes, and to make sure that they're operating to a high standard. Again, look, I'm not sure the interest level in the types of equipment, but pasteurizers, cap sealing machines, tilt and kettle, blast chillers. So that's the dairy area. And again, we'll be able to link people in with our own food technology team, but also the technology team in Teagasc. Same with the meat. Meat is dedicated raw unit, kept at a constant temperature. And again, so again, if there's farmers out there who have had an animal slaughtered, we'll be able to take in, half a carcass or quarters, and they'll be able to add value to be able to go direct to consumer with the product. Again, all the facilities you need are there, and the backup support from the technology team. Seafood unit, again, your ice making machine, steaming, if you want to cold smoke, whatever it might be. We've a lot of the facilities there, and a freezing facility, walk-in freezer for this area as well. And then the general purpose, so again, combi ovens, brat pans, boiling pans, vacuum packing, the different types of facilities you'd need for just general food production as well. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of what we're offering. I suppose we're trying to give a rounded support to the food community, and the facilities that we build are only the beginning. So while it's taken an awful lot of our time to develop the campus at the cost of 7 million, it's really only a journey we're beginning on, because it's the food community and the usage of this facility that'll help people to develop, and us providing the supports as required and being able to pivot within that space. Look, I'm happy to take any questions on this. Our contact details are below, and we'd love to hear from anyone. We have group calls and everything, so it's, if you even want to just get to know the team, we'd be delighted to host that and open that conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Elaine. That was very insightful. It was like a whistle-stop tour of the campus. I can't wait for it to open and to actually physically be able to see it all. So we will take questions later on for Elaine, so you can pop them into the Q&A section. But next up, we're going to bring in JP McMahon as our second speaker of the day. So we're delighted to welcome JP, who is a chef, a restaurateur and author. He's a culinary director of the Eat Galway restaurant group, which comprises of Michelin-starred and near restaurant, award-winning Spanish restaurant Cava Bodega, and Tartare Cafe and Wine Bar. He also runs the Anir Boutique Cookery School. He's committed to the educational and ethical aspects of food, to buying and supporting the best of local and free-range produce, and engaging directly with farmers and producers. JP is the founder and plays host to one of the biggest and most talked about international food events in Europe, Food on the Edge. The highly successful inaugural event took place in Galway in October 2015, followed by equally acclaimed events until 2019. Unfortunately, the 2020 event fell victim to COVID. However, the team published an ebook, Lessons from Lockdown, Cooking After COVID, featuring many former speakers and voices from the industry. Director, founding and current chair of the Galway Food Festival, JP is an ambassador for Irish food and also an ambassador for Spanish food in Ireland. A published author and writer, he has a weekly column in the Irish Times and is a regular contributor to national radio and television programs. JP, we're absolutely thrilled to have you join us today. I hope you are well.
Absolutely, thanks.
Over to you now, JP.
Thank you very much. So I want to talk for the next 10 or so minutes about how we, I suppose, as an SME, have pivoted during lockdown. So over the last year and a half, pretty much, we finished service in Anir on January the 4th, I think, 2020. And little did we know that we would not reopen, or we haven't reopened yet, so but we're fingers crossed for July. And my Irish cookbook came out just in February 2020, and we had an English tour and American tour planned, and we got to do some of that, but unfortunately it was all cut short. But that's not to say that we didn't pivot a lot. And I think a lot of SMEs have to pivot for survival, because I think anyone who works for themselves or who runs an SME really you have to take care of it like your children. So when we realized we couldn't reopen, we began fairly quickly to try out different ideas. And of course, like many restaurants, we did takeaways from Cava. We had a box scheme in Tartare. And some worked, some didn't work. I suppose you don't build a restaurant to provide takeaway unless that is your model. So the takeaway model in Cava didn't work in terms of what it cost us and that. And in that respect, I think it was a good decision not to continue to do it, because I think you have to make we had to make difficult decisions over the last year and a half. But Tartare has remained constantly open as a takeaway cafe, and that has given us, I suppose, a sense of purpose, and we've kept on a small core team. I mean, we were fairly decimated. We have a staff of about 40 to 50, probably 50 at the height of the summer, and we're probably looking at a staff of about 5 at the moment. So fingers crossed for rehiring. Inear didn't reopen, but Inear probably pivoted the most in terms of going online and bringing the cookery school online. In the past, really something that even I thought about, in the sense of could I give a class online? And it was really customers who came to us, particularly some of our American customers, and said, could you do a class over Zoom? So the first ones we did were probably in May or June 2020, and they went well. We did 2 or 3 hour classes, all very, very private at the moment, just one-on-one or one-on-two. And from that, we started to develop longer classes or themed classes, where we would possibly do a class for 20 people or a 10-week class. And we also are doing an 8-week children's class at the moment, 2 of them actually. And so the children's class was actually oversubscribed. We had a phenomenal reaction to that, and really, if anything, it was the kids' classes that very much kept Inear going. I suppose faith in what we were doing, because I think pivoting is something that you do almost instinctually. But I think that the hardest thing about lockdown isn't necessarily the impact on your business, because from talking to people all around the world, both in Europe and in Asia and South America, I mean, we have been getting grants. And so that in that respect, we've been very, very fortunate. I have friends who are restaurateurs in Thailand who have just had to close because there is no or there are no grants for the restaurants. And so it was very much a kind of almost mental gymnastics. Like, we had to try and do something to keep the business going in some capacity. We also did hampers at Christmas, which again, something that I had never really thought about. And what we did was, a lot of the wild food and the seaweed that we pick and the different products that we make throughout the year on a regular year and that we use in the restaurant, we started to put these into hampers, and we actually started to sell them in Tartare. So that whole idea of turning foraged materials in a very simple sense, it could be crab apple and blackberry jam. On a more complicated level, it could be like a damson gin, which is a wild plum gin, or it could be some of like pickled elderflower. So a lot of things that we had only done in the restaurant, and we started to both sell them in hampers and also to sell them in Tartare. We also sold about 1,000 copies of the Irish Cookbook, which is probably something we wouldn't have done if COVID hadn't have happened, because it's published with Phaidon, who are a major publisher. It's in most bookshops, so it's not really our mandate to publish it, but it actually provided a revenue stream that for us, that actually kept the restaurants going as well. And you mentioned at the beginning about the symposium we run, Food on the Edge, which unfortunately again we had to cancel. last October. But again, it caused us to, I suppose, to rethink about how we had run the festival up to that point, what we were trying to do, and I think COVID has given us a lot of time to think about like what is essential and what is not essential. And I think in the past, we very much have our own personal identities tied to our businesses and to the restaurants. And I think I think now I would probably have a healthier attitude between the divisions between myself and the restaurant. Whereas in the past, it was very much all consuming. And I think that has given us, COVID has given us time to reflect about that. But as you mentioned in your introduction, we did do a book, Lessons from Lockdown, where we invited about 150 people all over the world to reflect about how COVID had given them pause to think about their own industry, whether they were a chef, a farmer, a wine grower, a hotelier. And it was a very, I suppose, positive project for us because we couldn't do the symposium. We had talked about doing the book in the past in various different guises, but I suppose COVID gave us that bit of time to actually reflect and say, well, let's put this project in. And we did it for free because it was something that I wanted to give back to the industry. So we put it up on our website, and it's had about 5,000 downloads all over the world. So it is, and you can still download it for free on the Food on the Edge website. It's www.foodontheedge.ie. And it's called Cooking After COVID, Lessons from Lockdown. And it is emailed from many, many different people all over the world, from very, very famous chefs, such as Massimo Bottura and Virgilio Martinez and Albert Adria, to others who are based in Ireland, and other people that we really wanted to speak and to reflect on what had happened over COVID. Two of the things that we did for Food on the Edge was we, I suppose, engaged more with our podcast, and we have been, I suppose, steadily building up our audience. And we do a podcast once a month, still sometimes with local farmers. So say the second last one we did was with Siobhan from St. Tola down in County Clare. She's a goat cheese maker. And the most recent one we did was with Matt Orlando, who is a chef and restaurateur in a Mass in Copenhagen, who is probably running one of the most sustainable restaurants on the planet in terms of its mission and its the things that Matt does. So if anyone is interested in sustainability and food waste, Matt is certainly a person to look at. And we also did Instagram Live to reach out and to connect, and they had small audience. But sorry,
JP, we just had a little break in the transmission there. I'm not sure if it was the internet. Just as your final point there that you were saying. We
did the three things for Food on the Edge. We published our online book, which we made available for free. We did our podcast, and then we also did some Instagram lives, which helped us. I mean, I think that the important thing, I think, during lockdown and our ability to pivot wasn't so much in how much traffic we were going to get or how busy we were going to be. It's the same with Tartare and Cava. It was very much about survival mode and what we could do to, I suppose, to create things to make us to look forward. Because one of the things that happened during lockdown was that the time became very, very compressed. So instead of looking forward to what we're going to do in 6 months, it was very much what are we doing today or tomorrow. And so it was very important for us to be able to put stuff in the calendar, say, well, look, we'll do this event next week because it's something to look forward to. I think just to finish up, and I think that it's important to reflect about. I suppose people talk about how much will stick after COVID, and how much will stick in terms of our relationship with our own restaurants. And I've talked to Matt about this on our most recent podcast. And it is because sometimes, I mean, even as a chef owner, you have an unhealthy relationship with your restaurant in the sense that it's an obsession and you commit yourself to it. And I think that COVID has broken that habit a small bit. And so I hope that we have an ability to see a better work-life balance going forward. I hope some of the online things stick. I think that given that we run an international symposium and we talk about waste and sustainability and climate change, it seems a little bit contradictory to fly 50 chefs in every single year, even though they might be talking about sustainability. So I would love going forward that we would be able to do a blended event, and we'll be able to possibly balance half of our speakers who wouldn't fly in, and we would be able to use stuff like Zoom or Springboard or any of the other platforms that people will be able to come and still talk. Also, I hope the online classes for us have been very successful, particularly not only from teaching children, which is a big passion of mine, and I'm very much into food education, but also the ability to give someone a cooking class in San Francisco would not have been possible in the past unless they come to Galway and spend time in an ear. And I would say 60% of the individual classes that we gave were with people in America. And that's because the book came out and Fight On are an American publisher. But I hope that those elements would stay. And then finally, I think personally, what I suppose, how did I pivot in terms of my own function? And I think two things. I think one was spending more time at home, and I don't think I ever cooked so much at home, which is another contradiction because I'm a chef. But when you spend your life cooking in a restaurant, sometimes the last place you eat is at home. So re-engaging with my two wonderful daughters. And the other was I started painting again and doing oil paints and actually selling one or two of them. So like that's I think an important aspect, because I think our work-life balance is certainly at odds sometimes with what we want to do ourselves. And I hope that the ways in which we pivoted during COVID will change our habits and will possibly make us happier and healthier in the long run. So I hope you've enjoyed my brief presentation about pivoting in terms of the restaurants and Food on the Edge and personally. And again, if you have any questions, you can put them into the chat, or I'll be here after for the Q&A.
Thanks so much, JP. Similar to Elaine, it was like a whistle-stop tour. I'm going to definitely be asking you, how do you juggle everything that's going on in your personal life and your business life across all of the restaurants and all the activities that you're doing? So it's one question I'm definitely going to ask you at the end of the session. So our final panelist for today is Chris Joll, the founder of Gut Instinct in the UK. And I'm delighted to welcome him to the webinar today. He has been on a personal journey of discovery in recent years, having been struck down with chronic fatigue syndrome in his mid-20s. It was a difficult time with lots of unanswered questions, but Chris was determined to get well again, and he did indeed get well. He learned over several years that the route back to good health was through a better understanding of food, and he found that a healthy gut and a healthy mind go hand in hand, and a diet rich in plant-based, prebiotic and fermented foods was his route back to good health. Gut Instinct was born out of a desire to help consumers achieve strong physical and mental health through proper diet and nutrition, and plant-based diets are becoming the norm, and gut health is getting more coverage and recognition than before, both of which he believes are key to gaining and maintaining a healthy body and a healthy mind. Welcome, Chris, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Joanne. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to share my story with the with the audience here today. I mean, you summed it up really. It's been, I guess my own sort of personal journey of discovery, which kind of led me to sort of where we are today. In regards to the story of the business and how we kind of came about, it really came about from redundancy. So I was made redundant in January 2019. I was working for Freshways Dairies in London, largest independent processing dairy in the UK, and I was head of sales for the UHT division, which our main focus was dairy sticks, milk portions, which are little milk portions that you tend to see on airlines. So off the back of redundancy, I really had about 3 months to kind of get a business plan together and just go for it, really. I've been doing lots of talking over the years, and I've always had quite good instincts in terms of trends and what's next. I nearly did gin about 10 years ago, actually. And, we all know what happened in the sort of gin category. So I've always had quite good instincts in terms of, what's happening in the industry or what the sort of main drivers are. So going back a little bit, I went out to Cial in Paris, which is a big food trade show. It alternates biannually with Anuga in Cologne. And I took gut instinct out as a concept there. So it was literally empty cartons of, Tetra Pak. And we had a trade stand. And this was, I guess, still quite early in the whole milk alternative scene. And the response that we had was fantastic. People like the brand. So it was really a market research piece just to sort of validate that, what I thought was an opportunity was indeed the case. So that sort of gave me the confidence to push on. And to be honest, the redundancy kind of forced my hand a little bit in terms of doing it. So that's what I did. So obviously can't do anything without money. So I needed to get some investors on board. So in May 2019, we had a sort of a seed fund investment, which allowed us to develop the products and the packaging and sort of aim towards doing our first production run. Now, one of the products that we were due to launch was a product called Oat Sticks. And Oat Sticks is basically oat milk in a stick pack format, exactly the same as a dairy stick, but obviously a plant-based variable. Now, that was really going to be a big income generator for us as a business, because I put 400 million dairy sticks into 21 countries. So I really had that distribution network that I could go to and say, hey, we've got a plant-based solution now as well, which even now still isn't available. However, we had some issues with our manufacturing partner. And I think that's a note of caution for any sort of young brand starting up. Manufacturers can really kind of sell you the dream, and they'll tell you everything you want to hear. I think it's really important to do your due diligence, because if you build your whole business model around that, it can come back to bite you. So we couldn't prove sterility on the product. And as such, we couldn't launch it despite all the sort of major airlines globally wanting to take the product. So we pivoted, and we're developing an alternative to that. Currently, we're working with the Welsh Government and Aberystwyth to come up with an alternative solution to that format. So we focused on the milk alternatives, but in the 1 litre format. So barista editions. Now, why do we do barista editions? Obviously, we talk a lot about health. I was in the coffee industry for 15 years prior to being in the dairy industry. So I've worked for Lavazza as a barista trainer. So I'm really passionate about coffee. And I felt like the likes of Oatly and Outpro would do a bit of a challenger brand, a British challenger brand. And so we set out to do that. Now, they're so dominant, those big guys, the likes of Oatly and Outpro, of course. We were really set on having a sort of unique selling point over and above, because frankly, nobody's going to pay attention to you unless you do have. And but when we were developing the product, we had Oatly on the table as a benchmark, because I think they're valued at 7 billion now. So they've done a lot right, and they've been doing it for a long time. So we looked at that and we thought, how can we add value? So taste is one of the ways you can add value. So we actually decided to have a higher oat percentage in our products. Now, what that becomes is something is a naturally sweeter product. So for certain marketplaces, so the United Arab Emirates, for example, they love it because they tend to have a sweeter tooth. So we don't add sugar, but you have that kind of natural sweetness coming from the oats. And then the other thing, and for us as a brand, this is the thing that we always lead with, and it's health. So what we noticed in the market is there were a lot of milk alternatives on the shelves that were pretty empty, actually. White waters, I would describe them as very expensive white waters. So we needed to achieve two things. One, it needed to perform from a barista's perspective, which is actually really difficult to do. Milk alternatives are actually quite easy to do if you keep them really, really sort of clean deck. Milk alternatives for baristas are definitely not. So there was a big focus on functionality in terms of being able to steam it and stretch it and do the whole latte art thing in the cup. And then the other thing we wanted to make sure of was that consumers were actually getting some nutrition, because if you take something out of your diet, i.e. dairy, you've got to be really careful in terms of what you're replacing that with. So there's a lot of elimination, but it's also about what you put in once you've eliminated those foods. So fortification was really high on our agenda, because you don't really get the nutrition that you need from, say, 3% almond paste going into an almond drink. So our current milk alternatives have got the highest levels of fortification of any plant-based milk alternative in the market, to my knowledge, to date. And so we've got B12, B2, vitamin D, which has obviously been really high on the agenda of late. And we also, calcium, of course, at the same level as cow's milk. And then we also put folic acid in. Now, we're the only brand doing that. We just felt that was really important, because you do get folic acid from dairy. And obviously, if you're female and you're pregnant and you're not consuming dairy, we felt it was important to put some folic acid in there. So an average serving of our oat milk, for example, so serving being 250 ml, is going to deliver 75% of B12, B2, folic acid, vitamin D, and 37.5% of calcium. So we think it's delivering on two levels. So in terms of the, what's unique about us, so the formulation of any plant-based really is a bit of a science experiment, frankly, because consumers want it to perform like something that it's actually not. So that will be the same with meat alternatives or milk alternatives. They want milk alternatives to be like milk, really. So especially when you're formulating barista, you need to use some functional ingredients that are necessary in order for them to foam and enable the barista to do the latte art and such. So acidity regulators, we use a small amount of Gellan gum. Now, the Gellan does two things. It holds the vitamins in suspension, which obviously is key, because if you don't do that, the vitamins fall out of the mix and they sit on the bottom of the pack. And of course, the consumer isn't actually getting what they pay for. So that's really important. But it also helps the microfoam. So without getting too sort of techy with the coffee side of things, but when you do the latte art and you mix it with coffee, very quickly, the microfoam, the little bubbles, they can burst. So what you end up with is a flat white or a cappuccino that's really thin and it doesn't have that sort of creaminess that you would expect with milk. So the Gellan helps the microfoam holding cup, so you get that nice mouthfeel all the way to the end of the cup. So for barista, you need to put some stuff in it in order for it to work. We felt it was really important to have the nutrition in as well. Now, in terms of milk alternatives, and would you put our barista edition on your cereal? Well, from a fortification perspective, yes, but there's some ingredients in there that are unnecessary if they're not for baristas. And I think that really comes on to a point that I wanted to make in terms of like how I suppose we see ourselves standing out amongst our competitors in this space, but also in the food industry as well. We don't want any smoke and mirrors around what we're doing. If we do something and there's a reason for it, we'll explain why that is. And there's certain ingredients that we just wouldn't put in if it was just for pouring on your cereal or drinking out of a glass. And I think it's important to be transparent, to educate the consumers so they can actually make an informed choice. So if it's barista and it's coffee, then choose the barista edition. If it's pouring on your cereal, we would suggest choosing something cleaner deck. And we are going to come out with another range of milk alternatives for that intended purpose as well, but very much with a focus on gut health, a specific focus on gut health, obviously. So prebiotics is really where we're leading. And if possible, probiotics, which is a challenge because when you take probiotics for a UHT process, whilst there are probiotics out there now that survive heat treatment because they're encapsulated, it's the manufacturers that really don't like that because they spend their whole life trying to keep bacteria out of the pack, and we're trying to convince them to put it in the pack, and that's an uphill task, I can assure you. But we're getting there. So we're working with Kerry actually on that because they've got some really interesting innovations. So I think, transparency is key in terms of how we stand out. Education, so consumers can make that informed choice. just being innovative really, and kind of just always looking to improve on what we're doing, not resting on our laurels, making sure we stay relevant to our, you know, to our target consumer. And the other thing that we're really passionate about is the sort of community side of things. And I mean, we've had a shoestring budget so far. We've got some new investment partners coming in, which is gonna change that for us, hopefully. But we've done our best to reach out to, I suppose, those Instagram followers really. But if we put something on Instagram, you know, we're only currently reaching about 750 people maximum. So it's probably 10% of that. So whatever we've got to say, it's probably not actually hitting that many people. But when we've got a bigger following, we want to create that sort of community feel to the business. So an example of that would be microbiome testing. So you go onto our website, you order a microbiome test kit, you send the results back, and we're partnering with a company called Atlas Biomed on this, who specialise in this area. So they have apps so the consumer can go on and see what's going on. And then we'll bring in some nutritionists that can basically have a look at those results and make recommendations off the back of that. So we're really talking about, you know, that interaction and potentially a sort of subscription model. So based on those results, we'll make recommendations. And it might be that, you know, there's a kombucha subscription or a probiotic subscription. It might be that if somebody's gut is in a really bad state, we would recommend, you know, like a 50 billion entry coated probiotic. It might be that it's just a maintenance dose of plant-based kefir, or, you know, some kind of product along those lines, some prebiotic fiber blends and such. So I suppose in terms of how we want to stand out, that's how we see ourselves. We're still a young business, but that's our ambition. I just wanted to touch on the pandemic. Now, you know, to quote Charles Darwin, you know, only those that adapt to change survive. You know, I was told that at a very young age in my career by my very first boss.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Sorry,
could you please repeat it?
Siri talking to me. Yeah, no, I think that for me has been really, really important, and a message that kind of stood with me throughout my career. So I think it's key that we adapt. Now, our model going into this pandemic was food service. So we were targeting the food service industry with our products. So all of our sales were based around really supplying distributors that were going into coffee shops. So obviously all coffee shops shut, so we kind of had to adapt and adjust. So we spent, you know, what little money we had on our e-commerce platform and started driving sales through that, and that just kind of kept us going, alongside the support that we've had from the Welsh government, which has been fantastic, to be honest. You know, it's kept us in the game. So I think that's really important, is to perhaps spread your risk moving forward. So we were really focused on food service. Now, moving forward, we are also going to be equally as focused on sort of retail opportunity. And I think that just kind of future-proofs us moving forward, really. So I think, you know, diversification is really, really important. Just in terms of product lines, so currently we've only got oat milk. Now, the reason why we've only got oat milk is because of working capital, and this is something that I just wanted to touch on as well for certainly people that are thinking about going into business. It is absolutely key. I mean, whatever you think you're going to need, you know, at least double it in terms of the time that it takes to get it off the ground and the money that it needs to get it off the ground. So I think working capital is absolutely key, especially when you're trying to compete with some of the bigger brands. So if you want to accelerate growth, you're going to need investment, and a lot of it. That then kind of changes the landscape in that you're kind of beholden to investors. So a lot of people kind of start a business because they want freedom, and they don't want to be in that kind of employed role. But actually, you've always got somebody to answer to. So I would say that, you know, don't go into business thinking that you're going to be free, because it's far from the truth, especially when you go down that sort of investment route. So getting the right partners and choosing them carefully is so important. Knowing your target market, again, is key. I think when we first started out, we were trying to be lots of things to lots of people. Now we're much clearer about what our USPs are. And that really just comes from getting out there, doing trade shows, talking to consumers, buyers, industry experts. And with a brand name like Gut Instinct, the leading question at trade shows from industry experts was, tell us about the benefits to the gut. So people already assume that we're a brand that is related to gut health. Now we're just being much more focused on bringing products to market that deliver on what people think that we are. So that's our focus moving forward. So just, again, I wanted to touch on the sort of SME scenario. So again, just back step, you can grow organically, but you're going to grow slowly, and it might be sort of lifestyle until you get to a certain stage in your life cycle, and that's fine. I think that's where you sort of retain control. And it might be that you run that alongside an employed role initially until you get to a certain size where you feel like, or you're confident enough to sort of jump ship, or you go down the investment route, or the borrowing of money. And then of course that comes with personal guarantees, which is an absolute game changer in terms of headspace, because it's obviously there's significantly more risk. So I would say just, consider all of those things if you're somebody thinking about starting a business in this space, which is fiercely competitive. So, but very enjoyable. I love what I do. I can't ever imagine me going back to an employed role. I think I'm largely unemployable now, to be honest. So I would encourage people, if they want to do it, go for it. But it's going to be a tough task. And just going back really to what JP was saying earlier in terms of that whole work-life balance, having been ill in the mid-20s, I realised when I got better that I didn't want to be in that place again. So I've always had not always, but since then I've had a good handle on the most important thing in life. And COVID kind of just, reaffirmed that anyway, reaffirmed what I already knew, which is, without your health, you've really got nothing. I want to use an analogy, and somebody told me this, but if you wake up in the morning and you're in your big house and you go downstairs and you open your big door and you get in your big Ferrari and you start the engine, but you don't feel very well, you're not going to enjoy the Ferrari or the big house or any of that stuff. So I think it's so important to make sure that you look after your health, because you're not going to be able to give your best to your family or to your business if you neglect your health. And I think out of this pandemic has come a lot of people have had time to sort of reassess that. I hope that people don't forget what they've learned in the last year, which is just that. So that's me. Thank you very much for your time. And obviously, if you've got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
That was great, Chris. I love it. Absolutely very, very insightful and informative. And I love the bits of advice that you brought to it as well. We are going to get our Q&A underway. Unfortunately, JP did have to go. He has another engagement, but we're going to invite Elaine back onto the panel. And we're also going to welcome Natalie Roos and Alison Hazelgrove from BIC Innovation onto our panel as well. So Natalie is a registered and accredited nutritionist, nutritional consultant and nutritional research scientist. She joined BIC Innovation in 2019 as nutritionist and nutritional food markets and technologies researcher. Her expertise in nutrient composition, sports nutrition, trends analysis and formulation has led to consulting for international health-focused brands, and with a keen interest in nutritional biochemistry for optimal health, disease management and performance nutrition, she has a wealth of experience working within multiple populations, ages and demographics. And we also welcome Alison Hazelgrove, who has over 35 years of experience in the food industry, both running buying teams at a major UK retailer and as a product development director in fresh and frozen food manufacturing. Leading an award-winning team, she typically launched over 100 new and reformulated products each year for supermarkets and food service customers. And having established her own consultancy in 2019, she is now a senior associate at BIC Innovation and project manager of the AFES in Wales. Welcome, Natalie and Alison. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been waiting in the wings for a while to come and join us. Absolutely fantastic. We've had loads of questions come in. I know Elaine has been answering some of those questions that have come in, and so has JP just before he left. I'm going to ask a question, first of all, to you, Elaine, with regards to challenges faced by the sector in recovering, particularly in terms of how hospitality can become seen as a great place to work, because this is something that here in Ireland, and I'm not sure about the UK, that the food sector is struggling with. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. Look, across the whole food industry, you know, from farm to fork, there's a huge challenge. You know, I mean, the incomes from family farms are a challenge. Succession of farms is a challenge in food production. Like food manufacturing has actually reduced back. You know, we're trying to potentially triple food production for the world by 2050, you know, according to the World Food Organization, but yet our food manufacturing in Ireland is going in reverse slightly, and a lot of that is often down to lack of innovation and you know, lack of investment in that area. And also, I mean, before COVID even hit, we had a huge challenge in hospitality in retaining particularly chefs, you know, and trying to make the sector as attractive as possible, you know. So there's a challenge no matter what area of the sector you're in. And look, we're not going to solve it overnight. That's one thing that's certain. But I think small steps. So, you know, when you take hospitality, for example, you know, the west of Ireland is very well represented in, you know, GMIT run a huge amount of courses in that area. Even in tourism as well, hospitality, the culinary training. Obviously, there's the hotel school in Shannon then that have a huge amount of graduates. So there are graduates available, but what I would like to see across the whole food sector is a huge amount more attractiveness into the, you know, courses in the west of Ireland related to food. So there are, you know, we're very strong in certain areas, but we aren't very strong in other areas. So, you know, we don't at the minute have an agricultural science course in Galway at all. We're very strong on the culinary end. So it's a mix across the sector, but if you want a pipeline of talent, new talent, you have to support right down to secondary school level by offering opportunities for students to actually, you know, see what the food sector is like and be exposed to that. I mean, they're seeing everything and anything on social media now at the minute. The likes of Facebook and HubSpot and all these places are very attractive, but our Indigenous industry and where we can provide employment in every rural town and village is in the food sector, and in our tourism and our hospitality. It's very important to support that. And I suppose our ambition, and we kicked off actually this week with a skills forum and an educational committee to work on that, to try and say, okay, well, what courses can we develop in the West to actually start a new pipeline of talent, you know? And secondary to that, then we have a huge amount of talent already in the industry and we don't want to lose them. So how do you offer further training? How do you make it attractive to them to retain? So the worst thing I would like to see is for staff to leave the industry entirely. I'm far more open to, you know, chefs pivoting into different parts of the food industry, whether that be through new product development, NPI, you know, farmers becoming, you know, selling direct to consumer, adding value. We want to keep that talent within the chain and attract new talent in. And I think there is opportunity in that regard, but we have to give more opportunity to engage in that sector. But definitely, I do feel for the hospitality sector at the minute, there's a huge challenge coming, you know, particularly restaurants, they don't have confirmation of when they're opening. So if you're trying to hire staff, how do you communicate what's on offer? When are you starting? How much are you being paid? The season, we're not quite sure how long that'll be. You know, there's I feel for the industry in trying to recover in that regard. And again, it'll be July when they open anyway at this point. So they'll have lost the May, June. And in Galway, like back in 2018, Galway City was really busy from like Valentine's Day, the latest St. Patrick's Day, right through to the end of October, at the end of the Oyster Festival. So there's a lot of time lost and we're trying to recover that, you know. So it is an ongoing challenge, and I think it's trying to keep people from leaving the sector entirely. To whether they can pivot, it would be great to see that. And the staff that operate in the food industry are very they're adaptable, they're able to change, they don't mind change, they're good with that. So it's a great asset that we need to try and retain. But I do empathise with the community that are suffering in that regard at the minute, because the problem is along the whole chain at the minute.
And I see, Alison, you're shaking your head there. Do you want to come in and comment from the Welsh perspective and maybe from
Yes.
the perspective on a similar question?
I think so. I mean, having worked in the food industry for all these years, you know, it's not seen as a sexy gig. You know, you're you know, often in a cold environment, if you're working in the chilled sector like my history is, you know, and who of us looks our best in a blue hairnet and a pair of wellies? But, you know, it is a amazing industry with so many diverse opportunities for people joining the industry, you know, to have a fulfilling career and not just necessarily be looking at it as a job. So, and then I'm going to unashamedly promote our AFES training as well, as Elaine was talking about the opportunity for training. You know, we have been very mindful of the fact that anyone involved in running an SME has, you know, 100 calls on their time, and they're trying to do every aspect of their business, from the financing that Chris was talking about, innovation, marketing, consumer insight, packaging design. You know, you have to have 100 hats on. So what we've tried to do is cover a whole range of topics and have them in bite-sized pieces. And from this Thursday lunchtime onwards, we're also running like a drop-in session that we're calling lunchtime learning. So anybody who's doing the training, who's got any questions, you know, because it can be a lonely business, you know, out there running your own business. Perhaps, you know, Elaine alluded to it in a previous presentation, that, you know, making those connections with other people in a non-competitive environment, you know, is very important. So, yeah, we'd love people to sign up for the AFES training and join us on this journey. And, you know, our goal, as Jane said before, is to help you bring new products, healthy products to market, you know, that help people's health and lifestyles and well-being. So I think we've all said how much more important the focus is amongst consumers for that since we've had the pandemic.
Absolutely. And in terms of products then, Natalie, from your experience, you know, trends around food and nutrition, what do you see as the emerging food and nutrition trends, and maybe the opportunities for new product development?
I think as we're kind of seeing at the moment, that it'd be really interesting to see how COVID has this kind of knock-on effect, to see if some of these things stick. But at the moment, the main things that we're seeing really is health. Health is really driving the main purchases and a lot of product development. Of course, it needs to be healthy, but also, it needs to taste good. So again, we need a little bit of a challenge with those kind of overcoming those factors, especially with plant-based foods. Veganism and plant-based is certainly going to continue, but I think as well, kind of hinting on a little bit what Chris is doing, and I think he's kind of on the money there, is kind of looking at the plant-based plus. So there's so many plant-based options out there at the moment that consumers were just looking for a plant-based option. Now they've got a wealth of plant-based options. So what is the better ones? You know, are they looking for the ethos of the brand? Are they looking for the nutritionals? Are they looking for kind of added value? What are they getting there? And I think there's a huge opening as well for personalised nutrition, so particularly looking for gut health. As you're saying, mental health has been one of the key focuses over the last year. So people are looking for those products that will help, you know, kind of work within the whole system as kind of as a holistic view of the body. So kind of within a nutshell, that's where I see kind of the trends kind of heading. And then emerging, I certainly think kind of personalised nutrition is going to continue, but become a little bit more refined. But we're liking the tests, and that's great. They can be quite expensive. So it's kind of getting things that can work for more of the population, and just kind of keeping it simple. I think a lot of people kind of think they need to throw everything into a product, and sometimes actually keep the message simple, and keep those claims simple as well.
Lovely. And Chris, Natalie mentions there keeping it simple, but also diversification of your portfolio was important for the growth of your business. Have you plans to diversify even further now and to broaden the Gut Instinct brand beyond what you're already doing?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, Natalie, you just come up with a great little tagline there, didn't you? Plant-based plus. I quite like that. I might make that.
You can have that one.
I just written that down. Yeah, no, I think it's key, actually. I think in terms of attracting the retailers, you need a range. But in order to do that, you need so much cash as well. I think if you were if you're first to market, I think you can have a single product and people might sit up and take notice. But if you're like a challenger brand and you're just looking for market share, even if you have some unique selling points like we do, up against it in terms of getting the multiples to kind of switch on to that. And you need the cash in order to support that business as well, because they'll want, well, not all of them actually, they're getting better, but a lot of the multiples, they want extended payment terms from you. So you need all those credit facilities to in order just to go out and get that business. And actually just big innovation. I mean, I've been working with BIC for a good while now, and they've been so helpful in really helping. I'm not great with numbers, so I'm not a finance guy, but there's people within that team that can help you get that bit straight. And I think it's really important when you go in front of investors to make sure that your numbers are straight. You can't be good at everything, so it's just so it's just having those people around you that can kind of champion those parts of your business. So I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the problems with like that sort of entrepreneurial mind is that it's really busy. You can always see opportunities, and like I'm constantly being told just to focus, which is good advice, So there's lots of things that we could do as a brand. I think as a brand called Gut Instinct, I really do see us as having like a whole range of products that are pretty focused on gut health. Actually, we know more about the gut-brain axis now. So actually, when we're talking about gut health, we're also talking about mental health. Like the two really go hand in hand, certainly from my personal experience and so many others now. So the opportunity is large. I think the single biggest challenge is that you've got some really big players that are also now switching on to this. And unless you get the cash in order to drive your ideas forward, you're in danger of being a little bit late. And this has been highlighted. Waitrose have just brought out a brand called Gut Health, and Danone, who obviously been doing, yogurts and things for a long time, they're now really leading with gut health. And before it was kind of a secondary thing. Oh, we've got some good stuff for your stomach in there. Now it's like plastered on the front of the pack. So that's positive in the sense that like it kind of, it acknowledges, or it tells us that our instincts on this are correct. But there's really big companies like putting a lot of money into it. So just trying to find your little niche within all of that, really. And then hopefully one day one of the big boys will buy us and then I can go relax somewhere nice and sunny.
We can all dream and aspire to have somebody come in and buy us, but I love that about focus, the focus piece. We're all being told to focus. So if we personally focus on our strengths and we get other people to help us with our weaknesses, then it's a match made in heaven. And the supports are definitely there in Ireland and across the UK, and indeed through the AFS project as well. Well, a huge thank you to you all for joining us today, to our attendees for staying with us. I know we've gone slightly over time, but I think the conversation is worth it. And a huge thank you to Elaine, to Chris, to JP, to Natalie and to Alison for joining us today. Now, I do want to bring Jane Walsh back in just to say a few words to us. I think she's still hanging out in the green room on the webinar. There she is.
In the green room. Thanks a million, Joanne. Thank you everyone for your fabulous questions, and I'm so sorry we didn't get through them all. We could be here for hours. So for many of you who have questions, you will be able to follow up with speakers through their emails and contacts they've given. And please do check out our AFS website. For those of you working in the sector, you'll find fantastic supports free of charge in terms of training and webinars and access to these experts. That's what we're all about, developing a healthy ecosystem in the Atlantic area. So a huge thanks to our panelists and to Joanne. I'm going to hand you back to Joanne for the final farewell.
Well, there's nothing really left for me to say except that we're delighted to have hosted this event today. I hope you found it of value. I hope you've been inspired. I hope it has turned on a little light in your head for inspiration and innovation and creativity as we move forward beyond COVID-19. Hopefully we will see you soon. That's it from Galway and from our webinar today. Gur maithagad ga chéine slán agus beannacht.